Welcome to Testing in the Pub.
Okay, so welcome back to Testing in the Pub. I'm here at Mobile App Europe, the Mobile App Europe conference for the second year, and I've gathered together a group of people, and we're all going to have a bit of a talk about mobile app testing. So, gentlemen, introduce yourselves, starting maybe to my right.
Okay, hi, I'm Daniel. It's obviously the first time attending the Mobile App Europe conference because last year I was sick, lying in bed, so I'm actually glad sitting here with you guys and talking about mobile. So.
Hi there, I'm Andre. I'm also the first time on Mobile Europe conference. I attended some Mobile Crew meetups and glad to be here too.
Richard Bradshaw, tweet as the blog and blog as the friendly tester.
Get the advertising in there, Rich.
First time at Mobile App Europe as well. And yeah, it's good. First day just finished, it's gone really well.
Hi, I'm Sergej. Enjoying it for the first time too here. Working at Sync with Daniel together and with Dennis. Doing iOS testing mainly hands-on.
Hi, I'm Dennis. I'm the one who already attended this conference twice, so together with you. And I'm working at Scene as a QA manager in mobile.
Cool. So what I thought we could talk about is, firstly, some of the challenges we see around mobile testing at the moment. What challenges do you face day-to-day testing mobile, and how do you go about solving those? Maybe pass on some hints and some tips that you've learned in your testing which could help the listeners. Who wants to go first?
I could start maybe. What we are facing currently in our company is that the mobile development now is in the state where we are spreading our different teams. It means we have development in several domain teams and have to integrate it in one app together, and have also, of course, have a great quality as we are used to, but it's actually pretty difficult because different teams have different approaches, different level of pressure that the product owner are putting on it, and we are facing at the end, at the integration phase, a lot of different levels of the quality of the app, and have to decide what we are doing with this. And we are still in the learning phase, and I hope we will improve with every iteration.
It's an interesting one. It's a situation I'm in as well. The team I work with, we've just got slightly too big. So we're at that kind of growing pains stage where we have to figure out what's the right way of organising this. So we're trying not to do the really obvious thing, which is split all the non-business people away from the, or rather all the tech people away from the business people, and then maybe say, oh no, we've still got too many tech people, let's just have the app guys and the server guys. So I don't like that as a kind of, as an organisational model for writing mobile apps. All that does is it kind of almost reduces the app to like a dumb client, and you make that assumption. And it's just, those boundaries are always where you're going to get those communication issues.
And I think previously the app development was treated like kind of game. It was like, fun. It was something easy, something not too complex. But now it starts to be really, really complex, and it starts to professionalize itself. Difficult word after the wine. Pub testing. And now we get this problem that actually the how should I say it, web development and kind of backend development already passed, but we are learning it from the beginning.
I'm looking at Richard here, having just come out of his workshop on how to use proxies to help mobile testing. Any hints and tips you could pass on? I know you've been doing mobile testing for the last 16 months, almost exclusively.
Hints and tips, we try and keep all our platforms in sync. We had a spell where Android was playing catch up with iOS. iOS was always our lead platform. But then the web got involved as well, and then the web was playing catch up. But now we're all on an even keel. We try and make sure that we stay that way. So Android and the web are no more than normally a week or 2 weeks behind iOS. We still do iOS first because that's our biggest customer base, based on the analytics. But yeah, you try and keep them in sync, because then you've got, when you're talking about integrating with the server, you've then got all the teams talking about the same things at the same time. So the iOS developers have their questions, and the Android guys can be there at the same time, and the web guys are there at the same time. Whereas if it's all staggered, you end up asking the same questions, and then the back-end people are always like, I've already answered this question once, and then it just slows everything down. So yeah, trying to do everything at the same time. And then from a testing point of view, it makes my life a lot easier, because like if I'm creating data, I can use that data on all platforms at the same time. Whereas again, if they were really far staggered, I have to recreate it again, and if I'm setting up various environments, I have to do it again. So having them all at the same time, it does make things a bit easier for me.
When you do your mobile app testing, are you finding you're testing primarily from the app? Because one thing I've been looking at more recently, and I've been talking about more recently, is be sensible about where you target your testing. So at the end of the day, an app is either a very dumb or a semi-dumb kind of a server, and so there's a set of web services there, and sometimes you may get more bang for your buck by testing those web services directly and not testing the app at all. And that kind of come through a little bit earlier when we were talking about proxies as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on your context. So in my context, I'm not really involved with the back-end team. We communicate obviously and talk to each other, but they're responsible for building the web services and testing them themselves. My responsibility is just for the apps and the web in terms of what I test. But obviously you can't not touch the back-end. So I have my focus has been always the mobile. I try and focus on the mobile, which is why today with the proxy workshop, if I can eliminate some of my interactions with the back end, it means I can make sure the app is working and I can focus on the app in isolation. But there still has to be an element of end-to-end. I don't really like the term end-to-end, but there has to be an element of integration with all stages of the application.
Are you using some sort of automation tool, or?
No, so we have no automated check-in in our suite, which is good in a way, because the main reason we're so fast-paced that we're trying to release the app once a month. Internally, we're releasing pretty frequently, and for me, I'm the sole tester on the team. So for me to maintain an automated suite is going to eat a lot of my time. And
it's a really interesting point, because it reminds me of the graphic in your book, in fact, Daniel, the ice cream cone. And when I initially looked at that, I thought, really?
Yeah.
But then when I thought a little bit more, it does make more sense, and it is, as you say, it's that pace of project, because we're having some challenges at the moment trying to figure out how we build automation into our release cycles, and it's exactly the same thing. We're on basically a roughly monthly cadence.
Well, as you know, as I talk a lot, for me, I see automation as a suite of tools. You might have the tools that are doing checking for you. You might have tools that deploy the app. Some of the best mobile stuff I've done is ADB scripts that just install, uninstall, and clear data. Those save me loads of time, because I don't have to go into the app manager, find the app, clear data, and go back again. I can just fire a command line, and those tools save me a lot of time. But the biggest reason is, if the app's changing so much, then we're looking for change. Well, there is change, and we need new information. If I'm spending all my time making sure old information is still valid, we ain't getting any new information. So I just don't have the capacity to do it. But it doesn't mean that I don't use a lot of tools. We're using Charles Proxy today in the workshop. I mentioned ADB scripts. There's stuff in Xcode that I use and take advantage of. So there is still a lot of tools, but doing automated check-in with mobile at the moment for me is still hit and miss. It can be quite flaky. The mobile platform isn't as mature as the web. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just it's not good use of my time in my context right now.
No, I mean, even Dan Kula said that in his keynote this morning, was that Appium at the moment is beta, and before version 1 it was very much definitely not even beta, but it is still flaky. He assured us that version 1.5 is extremely stable, so
we should give it a try, actually, because we're currently using Keep It Functional now for the iOS department, and we're not really happy about
We
it.
are
You know,
not
it's like
satisfied also.
it's not really maintained by the community anymore. It's not really owned by Square anymore, and therefore maybe we should give Appium a try.
Look for alternative.
Yeah.
But we definitely need automation because we try to speed up our release cycles by now.
Yeah.
We try to release every 2 weeks, and our platform is actually pretty complex. It means the product is complex, and we cannot cover it everything every release manually. It's really, really difficult. And we notice that we just need it because otherwise we will release too many bugs. And if we find some bugs, we have to retest it again because some issues like tracking, like all this stuff for marketing, it's too expensive for us if it comes to the customer.
Biggest challenge I've seen with mobile automation in the team that I'm in is the speed of the tool. So I don't know what happened in iOS 9, but our Appium scripts, our sanity test suite, went from being 15 minutes long to being 25 minutes long.
What?
We didn't change anything. There's something in iOS. This is only running in the simulator as well. So there's something in iOS. There's a little bug in there somewhere at the moment. Which means the simulator either fire. I think the simulator fires up really slowly.
Okay.
And so consequently, we find that 25 minutes for a sanity test run is insane. That's ridiculous. 15 minutes, you could argue, is also insane. But that's the nature. If you start driving a mobile UI, whether it's in the simulator or a real device, your scripts are going to be slow. I don't know whether you guys have seen any way of speeding them up, but it's almost like a fact of life. And again, it kind of supports that. Do you do more manual tests? Do you do less automation tests? Particularly when you've got that fast-paced mobile project kind of vibe going on.
We actually solved a bit this problem with slow UI tests by splitting the execution of test suites into the parallel execution on different mobile emulators, mobile device emulators. So we execute, for example, 15 tests on 5 executors. It takes 3 times less time as if we do the UI tests in one row. So we now narrow down the time to 15 minutes. And we have more than 150 tests.
End-to-end tests, like driving the UI in total.
I'm talking about Android now. Not about iOS.
On the iOS, we are trying just to minimize the number of the integration tests because now we are trying to really think about what we are doing with unit tests, what we are doing with Facebook snapshot tests, and what we are doing with integration tests. And trying to reduce the final integration test suite to the minimum of needed tests to go through the whole system, and the rest to cover via Facebook snapshots tests for the UI and unit tests for the basic tests.
Has somebody tried with capture and replay tools? For example, if I think about Eurochip, if you are having the capacity to automate and to maintain scripts, what about a capture and replay tool, for example? I know something, I don't know.
One of the biggest problems we have though is like our data creation. So we don't really have the ability to get the API into a certain state. They also with the capture and replay. Our app is for the client I'm at tries to be the forefront app, so it's redesigned probably every 6 months. So the layout, the navigation, all the elements change. So even with capture and replay, I'm still going to have to invest quite a bit of time re-recording every time.
But in terms of capture and replay, you're executing the tests manually, and so you're passing a test case. Maybe once upon a time you capture a test case. So
I think
it saves kind of time.
Yeah, I think it's just like even without I quite advanced in writing good automation, so I try and make it highly maintainable and easy to change. But even with going to that level, because of the redesigns that take place, it's a lot of rework, and it's not really worth the effort. I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier about 15-25 minutes to execute, it's also what's the target of your automated checks? Is it the app? Is it the end-to-end? If it's the app, can you make it talk to a stub? And therefore you then got no HTTP traffic, which may potentially speed up your UI automated checks with the mobile.
Yeah, it's kind of flipping the idea of be clever and test the web service around the other way. It makes absolutely perfect sense.
And also, nowadays, you can spin up a really basic Node.js server that just returns a standard JSON response pretty quickly. A lot of the API documentation tools have this ability now. I think Swagger has the ability to do this.
Yeah, you can certainly use Swagger to kind of. I think it's called. They have a kind of try it now feature. Basically, poke the API. So if you've got your API documented in Swagger, you're lucky anyway.
I think that one of the key things we did in our app was we tried to work out why manual regression was taking so long. And we worked out that a lot of it was data creation. That's the time we were spending. So we actually automated that. So now we automated data creation. The actual manual execution time dropped. So while if you tried to run your 150 scenarios manually, which bit actually eats the time? And if you can find a way of speeding up those little bits, then you might find that you can reduce the manual time. Obviously, context is king, and some apps some apps really need automation. We're fortunate to get away with it. The app's doing really, really well. Again, it's just our app context.
Yeah, context is key.
It is.
You are famous for saying mobile testing is just testing in a mobile context. Are you not?
I do say that because there was a lot of people going around saying, there was a lot of talks about how different mobile testing is. And for me, at the end of the day, the core fundamentals of testing still exist. We're just doing it on a mobile platform, and it means things are different. But there was a few things on your slide this morning about how we have different platforms. And the web's always had different platforms: Linux, Web, Mac, then Windows, Mac. Different operating systems have always had different browsers. And actually, you could argue the mobile's now getting more like the web it used to be. There's now 3 or 4 active versions of iOS, whereas actually browsers have less active versions now because they're pushing them more frequently than they used to.
I guess what you have to take into account in mobile is the hardware has more of an impact over the software than it would in a web situation. So the things fragment. And the fragmentation at hardware level has more of an impact than
the mobile
it does at web level.
Different dimension, I think. It comes the whole thing again with different networks, with instability, with turning landscape posting, gyroscope, and just additional everything. What comes
all this context-sensitive stuff. This context.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the hardware is definitely the biggest difference. Like most people's. I'm saying that 5 years ago, some people are on really poor desktops at home, with like 512 RAM, and they would struggle to load some of the cutting-edge websites. And we see that on mobile devices now.
Absolutely right.
User persona. You could argue a lot of old people have low-end phones or low-end smartphones or feature phones.
You'd be surprised. I mean, a little bit of me kind of like dies every time I'm on the train and I see like a 70-year-old person with the latest iPhone. Because I just know they've just walked into a shop needing a phone, and the marketing guy's just gone, right, what's the biggest commission here?
That's exactly. Are you guys working with the release cycles on mobile? So how often are you releasing your app? It's like
roughly once a month, although we're fairly flexible. We like to do enough that makes it worthwhile. I mean, I hate the Twitter app on Android. I absolutely despise it. I use it every day, multiple times a day, but I hate it because 3 or 4 times a week sometimes it updates.
Yeah. You're joining the beta testing group?
No, it updates enough already.
I'm taking part of the beta testing of Twitter, and it's even like 3 or 4 times within a day you get an update. So like every time that maybe the test passed, hopefully they build the APK file and send it out immediately, which is somehow annoying. So
too much.
And how is it for you, Richard? How often is your app?
We do try and do once a month. Obviously, iOS plays a part in that, so we have less time for the iOS release. So that's why we try and stagger, and it works well for us. So the iOS, we'll try and get the iOS. Let's say we start on the 1st of the month.
Okay.
we'll try and have iOS done by the 14th, halfway through. Try and submit that as early as possible in case there's any rejections that we need to deal with. And then Android, we then get the following week.
You can just press the button.
But because we stagger them, the Android guys get the advantage of the iOS is learning. So if we integrate them with a new API, they'll pass on the lessons they learned as they were developing it. And it makes the Android one go a little bit quicker sometimes. And then the mobile web, the mobile web's on a CD pipeline, so we release that whenever we're ready. We would like to do, iOS quicker, but the App Store, the submission process, and we had a few issues recently with being devved on new versions of Xcode. Then the people who release our app internally, they had different versions of Xcode, and they were trying to upload it.
The 6.4 to 7.
And they were using. I think there's 2 ways now to get stuff into Apple submission. They were using a different one, and Apple. We find Apple harder, but we've currently been doing once a month. It's going so far so good.
But I think a lot of companies are changing to this frequent
releases. So we have the same issue on iOS. We have like 4-week releases. But on Android, we are now like down to 2 weeks, like 2.5 weeks, because we have this stage rollout process in place. So we have like whenever all the teams have finished the developing, they start to integrate to our master branch. Then we do the final integration testing, running the whole test suite, gathering information, ask the teams, have shared test sessions, for example, so just sitting together like on various devices and testing the new features out there.
Session-based testing?
It's it's exploratory testing, session-based testing, whatever you call it. So we sit together like for half an hour maybe, and then start to test on our most used devices out there. And then we have this beta release, so we are using this beta release on the Apple and the Google Play Store actually for 1 week now. We're 1 week in beta testing, sending out the app to a couple of 200 people. I think 200 people right now. So we're trying to increase this number to get like early feedback from the customers there. It's actually quite
quite a good
response and feedback. So we're using a closed user group where we ask specific questions to users. How do you like that feature? Is it good? Is it bad? And we get really good feedback from them. Besides that, we have then for sure like hockey app integrated, so we see crashes right away. So we see, we have a crash in the beta release that is not there in the stage rollout release. So we're also doing the stage rollout process for Android, and then we can compare releases between each other. So we see like the 1.0 release is pretty stable, but the new beta version 1.1 is maybe unstable. So maybe we should like check even more stuff like that. And my question is, are you guys using beta releases as well? Or?
We are very. It's the beauty of mobile, basically. If you're not taking advantage of the fact that everybody's got a phone where you work, or even in the wider community, then you're really, really missing a trick. So we have an internal sort of 15 people, call it an alpha group, which gets a test flight very regularly. We've got a bigger beta test group that gets one less frequently, but before it gets released. And that forms a really important part. We get all that feedback. We put feedback mechanisms in place. I mean, the thing I said earlier about booking a room in the middle of your office, putting food in it, and having a 1 hour drop-in session a week where people can come and tell you what they think about your app.
We should try that.
It works really effectively, because we tried everything else and everything else failed. So like, would you like to fill in this form? Well, no, I'd rather play on your cool new app, thanks.
But I mean, we notice all the time that our, how should I say it, web-spoiled product owners want to have very quick and often feedback. They want to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's almost kind of not acceptable for them, because they are used to, on the app they can deploy several times a day. The end user maybe doesn't even notice it, and they can evaluate it also very often. And on the mobile they don't have this possibility, and they often doesn't take into account this annoying factor of the end user. For example, I hate actually the description of the new version. It says, "Many thanks for using our app. We are trying to improve our app all the time." Blah blah blah.
Performance and bug fixes.
Exactly. And you don't have any information. What did they change here? Maybe it were, I don't know, just tracking points, or I don't know. But they don't give you any information. It's kind of hidden, and it starts to be a rule now.
Exactly.
In one of the last update informations, I saw a small bug as a symbol. It was a pretty nice text behind it. Didn't know that the Google words have a bug icon.
Font icon.
Everything's got an emoticon now. Emoticons are everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to provide users like specific feedback on what the release is about, because we had it in the past, like always, we highly recommend users to update because it's more stable, blah blah blah. But we got lots of 1-star ratings actually because of that, because people expected from us to be really precise in terms of release notes. And then we switched back to like this really specific, so whenever we have new features or like specific bug fixes in there, we really describe them, and it's really positive for the users. Then they changed their mind, we got like 4 or 5 stars rating again for that, and people love it, to be transparent on that point of view.
If you're releasing a lot, I think it's key as well. Like,
Definitely,
we're coming to the end of the year and there's not a huge number of new features coming out, and our product owner doesn't actually want to release this month because he knows the text will say bug fixes and improvements, and he's like, well, what am I giving my customers? Because there's a few features in there this time, but they're not for everyone. They're for a select number of people, and you can't really tell everyone about that. So we end up putting bug fixes and improvements in them. But just to change the subject, you hit on something quite interesting before. Like, so how does everyone deal with testing on all the different devices? How do you decide which to do? How do you actually go about doing it? I'll be interested to hear what people do with that.
We're mostly using statistics, so we know from analytics what kind of users are out there. Like we knew, for example, in the Android world, it's like Samsung rules the world for us. Germany, it's like Germany and German-speaking countries. So our main customers using Samsung S5, S6, S4, stuff like that. Then we have like a couple of Nexus devices out there and LG, but it's not really big. So we use this kind of numbers to start working with our mobile test automation and all this stuff. So we use mainly this stuff.
Do you vary the OS version?
Yes.
So it means you have 2 or 3 Samsung Galaxy S5 with 3 different versions?
Yes. But we are really in a lucky position. So I think like up to 40% of our users are running Lollipop right now on Android. So that's pretty awesome for us. So we're like, we're in a good position. We can use the latest stuff. And then I think we have 4.3 and Jelly Bean and KitKat running the rest zone with like a small portion of people coming just from Ice Cream Sandwich. So we are in a good position. But if you think like gaming apps or something like that, that's like totally different view.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think for iOS it's the same. Like iOS people, they see this stupid red badge on their icon in the settings. I need to update. They update, and they have always the latest operating system.
The speed they update is insane.
Yeah, it's really
absolutely insane. I mean, we're very lucky because we're on iOS only, and also the nature of the business area we're in means that people do tend to have the latest devices, and they do tend to make upgrades pretty quickly. And so, but even so, we had to have a good discussion about when do we drop iOS 7, for example.
You dropped it now?
We've dropped it.
No.
We agreed basically. Once the threshold goes below 4%, then we drop it. Yeah. And so we set a threshold. We've got Fabric in our app, so we can see exactly who's using the app, what iOS version they're on.
How high is your threshold?
Sorry?
How is your threshold?
4%.
4%. So that threshold is 4%. Yeah. So if it drops below that, then we drop it.
Yeah, we do something very similar. Like, I use analytics to test, but we have nearly 2 million users, so having all the devices can be quite difficult.
Yeah, sure.
So we take the top 10 to actually test them. But we're quite aggressive with our drop-in, so we operate 10%. So if you go below 10%, like I think we've just got rid of 4.1 Android, so now it's 4.2 and above. Okay. iOS is now only 8 and above. That was from a few months ago. But we find we have to be, because people change their phones quite quickly, and as you mentioned, the uptake is so quick now. I think 5 days after iOS 9 got released, we had nearly 15% of our users who had already moved.
It's amazing.
That was in less than a week.
Yeah, I think the general. I saw some general stats on Mixpanel, and it had iOS 9. It had iOS 9 adoption at about 40% after a few days afterwards, and mirrored by the drop in iOS 8.
iOS 8 adoption rate was terrible because of the
size,
because of the bug of the 8.1
storage.
I think it was the bug, and it was also the storage. It was a 5 gig download, whereas I think iOS 9 is like 1.9 or something. So you don't have to. It's like, don't tell me to delete my treasured memories of the family to install your OS update. I'm not going to do it.
But the iOS 8 adoption rate was very slow. It took about a month that the rate between iOS 7 and 8 is changing to 50%.
It took time.
Do you find it fascinating though that like people upgrade apps and they might have issues, and then the comments are horribly negative, but Apple released 9.
They released Apple
Music. Problems. 2 weeks later, fix. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, fix." Great. It's like you do it with your app, and it's like, it's like
it was like this time when they released Apple Music, like with this translation stuff. It was like horrible. Everyone was like, "Yeah, it's okay," blah blah blah. Then Spotify did this terms and conditions change. Everyone was going like crazy. Oh man, they're spying me and stuff like that. And it's like, it's Apple.
It's best summed up with that's Apple, isn't it?
One of the good things about the device testing you mentioned though is I called it blink testing, but if I'm doing exploratory testing, I like to line all the devices up and then just do the same action all the way along.
I've seen if you do that with automation, there's a few people who have written things that basically fire the same automation code out everything.
Yes, for example, Adobe Edge Inspect, which can, especially for web testing, and I think Ghost on Mac is also for web testing, where you can do one action on one device or on the PC, and it follows your action.
And it looks really cool.
Yeah,
it looks seriously cool. When all the phones go pew at the same time.
It's really good just to see how slow some phones are. When I line the iPhones up, the old 4S's are always about a second behind, as it goes along, and you can see the trend, and it's quite revealing. It's useful information from it.
You're using some kind of stress interruption tool, like to fire lots of commands to the devices, or monkey test or something?
No, I'm not doing any of that.
No. We're using it quite often, at least in the Android world, so it's pretty easy, like ADB show, monkey blah, and it's pretty amazing to see how fast the net can crash. Like we had just a release a couple of weeks ago, and we're like, let's fire the monkey, and there's 4 or 5 crashes immediately right after the start. And it's pretty easy to integrate in the whole development life cycle. So, it's pretty cool.
I would like to turn back a bit to the topic of features for not all the users.
That's a good one.
So are you using some kind of feature switches in your application?
No, so the context of this application, we have different customer segmentations. So this feature that's gone in only applies to a certain segmentation. So if you're not in that segment when you load the app, you just won't see it. It just won't happen. Whereas the other users will see it. So it's not a feature toggle. It's literally, you're based on you as a user. We know stuff about you. So only certain people see that feature. So it's not a toggle. It's in every app. But your username or your phone number means that it's triggered differently.
What about you guys? Are you using feature toggles?
No, you get the whole app or you get nothing. You want the whole app. Everybody wants the whole app.
Are you trying to separate the users between premium users and non-premium users or something? Is this separated by the
payment?
But do you think about something like that?
I mean, if you ship in a new feature and you want to try this feature for a certain amount of people, you don't want to release it to all the users, you can use this feature toggle. Or it can be also useful if you're releasing something new and you secure yourself that if there is something happening bad with this feature, you are able to switch it immediately. On the safe side.
I think it's good for it's similar to A/B testing. It can be really useful if you're trying to do something new, turn stuff off. I haven't done it, but I've seen a lot of people try and deploy different designs or different user flows. But I think more and more people are doing that now with the better programs that you can now do with Apple and Google, just to see how good a new login may work or may not. We try. Someone mentioned analytics. We're very heavily using Google Analytics, so we try and follow what the users are doing. By every time you tap or click or scroll, we can record all that, and that can give us an insight into what they're doing, and hopefully we'll design something good. We haven't really adopted any A/B testing as such, or feature toggles. I hear a lot more people doing it in the mobile space.
Yeah, I think it's something I've been looking at. We don't do it at the moment, but I'd love us to do a bit more of that.
I'd love to see how Apple dealt with it.
Fascinating.
When you do your submission, if Apple noticed that there was a way of users seeing different things, whether they would be too friendly towards that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's working okay, I guess. We have this stuff in our apps, so like feature toggles, and it's okay for Apple. So, but I think like Twitter, Facebook, they're doing the same. Like, from time to time, there's stuff in my app. Like, what the fuck is going on now? Then 10 minutes later, it's switched off again. And it's like,
I had a couple of weeks ago. I had a bit basically what looked suspiciously like a bit of material design in my iOS Twitter app.
Really?
Yeah, it had a circular button exactly where my thumb would be. I was like, what the hell?
Are you sure you were on iOS?
I was definitely on iOS.
Okay.
Yeah, it was bizarre. So yeah, maybe that's the way they A/B test is more about pushing more versions out. That's another way of doing it.
It would be fascinating with the new. I can't remember. You gave me the terms, but the new Apple interactions. Is it pop and
push and pop?
Push and pop.
Yeah.
Because people probably will want to now design their app to use those, but obviously the previous versions can't
support it. Yes.
Yeah.
So that is essentially a pretty new layout in a way. If you really took advantage of push and pop, your UI is going to look very different to your other.
Yeah.
And then what do we do then? Do we have two submissions for the different platforms? It's quite a big change, really. We've been swiping and touching for quite a long time now.
Yeah.
Yet now we've got this new way of doing things.
They have to have something like Android support library.
So
they automatically convert it.
They're doing the app thinning thing, which is essentially kind of will do the same sort of thing. Although I did notice that they didn't turn that on with the iOS 9 release, so there's no app thinning in iOS 9 for some reason. Anyway, right, gentlemen, we are getting towards the end of what would constitute a decent amount of podcast. But before we go, if I was new in mobile, just about kind of getting involved, or been involved a tiny bit, what's the one thing you would recommend that I do? Starting with Daniel.
Testing a lot of stuff in the wild, like getting an app on your phone and go outside and see what the app is actually doing, because there's so many things happening in the real world that are not happening in the lab situation, like drop in network, connection, offline mode, whatever. So really go out and test your app while you're on the move. That's one of my ideas.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry. I just want to get some time more. You have to get away from the normal testing process in terms of ISTQB and stuff, and test cases and all the analytics stuff, and the formal way. You have to use the app, and it has to be better than you expected. Expect the worst, and maybe you can test it better.
Thank you.
So the non-serious one would be buy a lot of cables. your cables will disappear, just randomly disappear. The second one would be Katrina Clokey did a really good mobile testing, what was she calling it? Pathway.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And that's definitely worth Google for that, you'll find that.
Yeah.
And that's really useful. And as Daniel said, just test as many apps as you can, because the more you practice, the more insight you'll get.
Just do not think too complicated. Just do whatever you do with your mobile device and apply it to the new app. Because I notice all the time, for example, in the interviews, if I'm asking the newbies, what would you do? And they don't even think about the switching to the landscape mode. It would be, just play around with it and
simple
do
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
And I also want to mention, don't think about mobile testing on the web. So it's not a web, it's much more behind the mobile devices. It's mobile network connection, switching, as you said, landscape mode, portrait mode, testing in the wild. A lot of hardware dependencies, sensors, and also different screen sizes. So all this you have to keep in mind, and of course operation systems. Try to get as much as you can from your analytics, get the most used devices for your application, and try to crack it in. Try to use to fulfill the memory of the device, and try to crack it in these bad conditions when the device has less amount of memory or bad internet connection. So I think this is good enough.
Awesome.
What's your advice?
What's my advice? My advice is...
Stephen's trainer.
No, I'll tell you, my advice is learn how to use your phone and learn how to use the apps on your phone and essentially play around with them and start to understand kind of the language of mobile. So understand about things like push and pop, for example. Understand about gestures. Kind of get involved in and get excited by the technology. And by mobile. If you work in mobile and you test in mobile and you're excited by new phones and you're excited by how things work, then I think you'll be successful. If you're not, you probably won't be.
Yeah, true.
So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Testing in the Pub.